Welcome to the MedRite video documentation. This tutorial covers how to add prerequisites to orders from the administrative web portal and how that affects administering orders from the MedPass machine. Prerequisites are actions that must be completed before an order is administered. For example, if a resident is taking insulin, the caregiver should be required to take and document the resident's blood sugar before giving the insulin order. Prerequisites can be added to any chronic, PRN, or treatment order. To begin using prerequisites, navigate to Residents, Medication Profile. Find and select the resident in question from the Resident Selection panel. Then find the order to add prerequisites to. Here we can see in the directions for this order that it should be held if the systolic blood pressure is less than 110 or the pulse is less than 60. Now select the prerequisites link. This opens the table of all prerequisites that are assigned to this order. Here we can see that the pulse prerequisite has already been added, so we will add the blood pressure one. Begin by selecting the new prerequisite button. Use the type pull-down to select blood pressure. Submitting a prerequisite with no condition means that the type of prerequisite selected will simply be performed by the MedPasser before administering the order. However, the directions clearly state that the order should be held if the systolic blood pressure is less than 110. We can indicate this with the condition. Select less than from the condition pull-down. Because this is blood pressure, radio buttons exist whether both the systolic or the diastolic blood pressure should be considered. The directions tell us to consider the systolic blood pressure. Use the input box or the slider to define the value. Use the Details input box to define the message that will be displayed to the caregiver should the condition be met. In this case, if the systolic blood pressure is less than 110. With all the information provided, click Submit to add the prerequisite to the order. The prerequisite we just created is now visible in the prerequisites table for this order. Notice that for each prerequisite entry, there is an edit and a delete icon. The edit icon can be used to open the details of the prerequisite and alter them as needed. The delete icon can be used to remove a prerequisite from this order. Now let's move over to the MedPass machine and observe the order we just created the prerequisites for. Notice the two icons on the left side of the order tablet. These are the prerequisites. Hovering over each icon will display a tooltip informing the user what prerequisite it is. An order cannot be documented as given without performing the prerequisites. Note that an order can always be documented as not given, even without performing the prerequisites. To complete a prerequisite, begin by clicking the icon on the left side of the order tablet. This will display a modal no different than the usual procedure modal of that type, in this case, pulse. Indicate the value with the input box or slider, and submit. Now let's perform the blood pressure prerequisite. Remember that we put a conditional on this prerequisite, which will trigger if the systolic blood pressure is less than 110. So let's see what that looks like. Once again, use the sliders or input boxes and submit. Because the condition was met, the message that we input in the Details input box is displayed to the caregiver. Now the caregiver knows that this order should not be given because the systolic blood pressure is less than 110. That concludes the tutorial on how to set up and use prerequisites. For more detailed information, view the prerequisite How to Use written documentation. Thank you for watching this MedRite tutorial.